On July 16, 1993, 28-year-old Jennifer Marie Holloway disappeared from Cedar Falls, Iowa. Her 1989 Honda Accord was discovered at 7:15 a.m. the following morning in the parking lot of Crossroads Shopping Center on University Avenue, purse on the passenger seat, keys missing. Black Hawk County Sheriff's deputies found no signs of struggle. Case number 932847 went cold on November 3, 1993, after a 110-day investigation produced no arrests. In September 2022, 29 years after Holloway's disappearance, cold case detective Michael Patterson reopened the investigation using advanced forensic genetic genealogy. DNA extracted from evidence collected in 1993 was uploaded to a public genealogy database, producing familial matches that led investigators to a suspect. The DNA profile belonged to someone with documented connections to the victim's workplace. What investigators would uncover about this individual's obsessive behavior and careful planning would reveal one of the most methodical predators in Iowa history. This case represents a landmark achievement in forensic genetic genealogy and demonstrates how DNA phenotyping and family tree reconstruction have revolutionized cold case investigations. It's also a story about how a community's determination to seek justice, combined with cutting-edge science, finally brought resolution to a family that had waited nearly 3 decades for answers. If you're interested in more cold case investigations and true crime content, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support helps us bring these important stories to light. Jennifer Marie Holloway was born on March 12, 1965, in Waterloo, Iowa, to parents David and Margaret Holloway. According to her high school records from Waterloo East High School, she graduated in 1983 with a 3.7 grade point average. She attended the University of Northern Iowa, where she earned a Bachelor of Science degree in computer science in May 1987. Her college transcript shows particular strength in database management and systems analysis. In September 1987, Holloway was hired as a systems analyst at Mid-America Financial Services, a regional insurance company headquartered in Cedar Falls. Her personnel file indicates she was responsible for maintaining the company's mainframe computer systems and training staff on newly implemented software. According to her supervisor at the time, Thomas Brennan, she was known for her methodical approach to problem solving and her willingness to work late hours during system upgrades. Holloway lived alone in a 1-bedroom apartment at 2145 College Street, apartment 3B, a second-floor unit in a complex called University Heights. Property records show she had rented the apartment since October 1987. According to her lease agreement, rent was $475 per month. The apartment manager, Dorothy Klein, told investigators in 1993 that Holloway was a quiet, reliable tenant who always paid rent on time and rarely had visitors. In January 1993, Holloway had begun training for a half marathon. Her running logbook, recovered from her apartment during the original investigation, documented daily runs averaging 4 to 6 miles. She typically ran along the Cedar River Trail system, a paved path that wound through Cedar Falls and neighboring Waterloo. According to entries in her logbook, she preferred early morning runs, usually between 5:30 and 6:30 a.m. Her social life, as documented through interviews conducted in 1993, centered primarily around coworkers and a small group from her running club. Phone records from Iowa Telecom showed regular calls to her parents in Waterloo, approximately 12 miles away, typically on Sunday evenings. She had no romantic relationship at the time of her disappearance, according to statements from close friends interviewed by investigators. On Friday, July 16, 1993, Holloway followed her typical work routine. According to time card records from Mid-America Financial Services, she clocked in at 8:02 a.m. Her desk calendar, later recovered by investigators, showed she had scheduled meetings at 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. that day. Coworker Linda Morrison stated in her 1993 interview that she and Holloway ate lunch together in the company break room around 12:30 p.m. Morrison recalled Holloway mentioning plans to stop at the grocery store after work. Security badge records show Holloway accessed the computer server room at 3:45 p.m. to perform routine system maintenance. She logged out of her computer workstation at 5:38 p.m., according to network access logs preserved by the company's IT department. Building security footage, reviewed during the original investigation, captured her leaving through the main entrance at 5:42 p.m., carrying her purse and a fabric lunch bag. The last confirmed sighting of Holloway alive came from Dennis Walsh, a Mid-America financial services accountant who was leaving work at the same time. In his statement to investigators, Walsh reported seeing Holloway's Honda Accord pull out of the company parking lot onto Technology Parkway at approximately 5:45 p.m. He noted nothing unusual about her demeanor or driving. Holloway's parents expected her to call that evening. According to Margaret Holloway's statement, Jennifer usually telephoned on Friday nights to discuss weekend plans. When the call didn't come by 9 p.m., Margaret Holloway tried calling her daughter's apartment. The phone rang unanswered. She tried again at 9:30 p.m. and 10:15 p.m. with the same result. Growing concerned, David Holloway drove to his daughter's apartment at approximately 10:45 p.m. According to his police statement, he knocked on the door for several minutes but received no response. The apartment manager, Dorothy Klein, used her master key to open the door at David Holloway's request. The apartment appeared normal. No signs of struggle. No indication Jennifer had returned home from work. Her bed was made. Dishes from breakfast were in the sink. Her running shoes and workout clothes were laid out on the bedroom floor, apparently in preparation for a Saturday morning run. David Holloway called the Black Hawk County Sheriff's Office at 11:22 p.m. to report his daughter missing. According to dispatch logs, Deputy Ronald Mitchell was dispatched to Holloway's apartment at 11:27 p.m. Mitchell's incident report noted the apartment showed no signs of forced entry or disturbance. He documented that Holloway's car was not in the apartment complex parking lot. The following morning, Saturday, July 17, 1993, at 7:15 a.m., Cedar Falls police officer Karen Rodriguez was conducting routine patrol of the Crossroads Shopping Center parking lot on University Avenue when she noticed a Honda Accord with a parking ticket on the windshield. The ticket had been issued by mall security at 10:30 p.m. on July 16th, indicating the vehicle had been parked there after mall closing time. Officer Rodriguez ran the license plate through the Iowa Division of Motor Vehicles database. The plate returned to Jennifer Marie Holloway. Rodriguez immediately radioed for backup and for a detective to respond to the scene. The vehicle was photographed and processed by the Black Hawk County Sheriff's Office Crime Scene Investigation Unit beginning at 8:05 a.m. Lead Detective Frank Morrison arrived at the scene at 8:20 a.m. His case report described the vehicle as locked, with no visible damage to the exterior. The front passenger window was rolled down approximately 2 inches. Holloway's brown leather purse was visible on the passenger seat. The vehicle's keys were missing. There were no signs of struggle inside the vehicle. Morrison requested the vehicle be towed to the sheriff's office evidence garage for detailed processing. Crime scene technician Robert Hayes documented the vehicle's interior using 35mm film photography. According to his evidence log, he collected Holloway's purse, which contained her driver's license, $73 in cash, credit cards, and various personal items. The purse showed no signs of tampering. A fabric lunch bag was found on the rear seat, empty except for an ice pack and a wadded napkin. The most significant piece of evidence was discovered on the driver's seat. Hayes noted in his report a small amount of what appeared to be blood, measuring approximately 2 inches in diameter, on the gray fabric upholstery. He collected 2 swabs of this material and packaged them according to department protocol. The samples were labeled evidence items 93-2847A and 93-2847B. Detective Morrison organized a systematic search of the Crossroads Shopping Center and surrounding area. According to the case file, 23 deputies and volunteers participated in the search on July 17, 1993. The search covered the shopping center parking lot, a wooded area behind the complex, and sections of Dry Run Creek, which flowed approximately 300 yards from the shopping center. Investigators interviewed mall security guard James Patterson, who had issued the parking ticket. Patterson stated in his interview that he noticed the Honda Accord during his closing rounds at 10:15 p.m. on July 16th. The vehicle was parked in the northwest corner of the lot, far from any mall entrance. He saw no one near the vehicle and observed nothing suspicious. He issued the ticket at 10:30 p.m. according to standard mall policy for vehicles remaining after closing. The shopping center's surveillance system was reviewed by investigators. According to Detective Morrison's notes, the system consisted of 4 cameras covering the main entrances and the mall office. None of the cameras provided coverage of the parking lot area where Holloway's vehicle was found. The mall management explained that exterior parking lot cameras had been discussed but not yet installed due to budget constraints. On Monday, July 19, 1993, Detective Morrison interviewed Holloway's coworkers at Mid-America Financial Services. According to his interview notes, he spoke with 14 employees who had regular contact with Holloway. Thomas Brennan, her supervisor, stated that Holloway had shown no signs of distress or unusual behavior in the weeks preceding her disappearance. She had no known conflicts with coworkers and no history of disciplinary issues. The investigation revealed that Holloway had stopped at First National Bank on Main Street at 5:52 p.m. on July 16, 1993. Bank surveillance footage, time-stamped 5:52:17 p.m., showed Holloway using the drive-through ATM. She withdrew $100 from her checking account. This was the last documented activity on her bank account. The ATM receipt was not found in her vehicle or purse. Phone records from Iowa Telecom showed no calls from Holloway's home phone after 7:30 a.m. on July 16, 1993. Her apartment answering machine, examined by investigators, contained 3 messages. One from her mother at 9:03 p.m., another from her mother at 9:32 p.m., and a third from her father at 11:18 p.m., minutes before he drove to her apartment. Detective Morrison conducted interviews with Holloway's running club members. 7 individuals provided statements. According to these interviews, Holloway had participated in a group run on Wednesday, July 14, 1993. She seemed in good spirits and discussed her half-marathon training progress. She mentioned planning to do a long run over the weekend. None of the runners reported any concerning conversations or behavior. The investigation expanded to examine Holloway's personal life more thoroughly. Detective Morrison obtained a search warrant for her apartment and conducted a detailed examination on July 20, 1993. According to his search warrant return, investigators collected her personal computer, a desktop model manufactured by Gateway, her appointment calendar, personal correspondence, and financial records. Holloway's computer, analyzed by the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigations Computer Forensics Unit, revealed routine usage. Her hard drive contained work documents, personal financial records managed through Quicken software, and correspondence with family and friends. Investigators found no threatening emails or messages. Her internet history, limited given the early stage of public internet adoption in 1993, showed visits to running-related websites and computer programming forums. Nothing suggested any risky online behavior. Financial records showed Holloway lived within her means. Her checking account at First National Bank typically maintained a balance between $1,500 and $3,000. She had a savings account with approximately $8,000. Her credit card statements showed regular charges for groceries, gas, and running supplies. There were no unusual or suspicious transactions in the months before her disappearance. Detective Morrison interviewed Holloway's neighbors at the University Heights apartment complex. According to case files, he spoke with residents of 8 apartments in her building and the adjacent building. None reported hearing or seeing anything unusual on the evening of July 16th. Several neighbors commented that Holloway was quiet and kept to herself, though she was always friendly when encountered in common areas. A significant development came on July 23, 1993. A witness named Patricia Summers contacted the sheriff's office. According to her statement, she had been shopping at Crossroads Shopping Center on the evening of July 16, 1993. She remembered seeing a Honda Accord matching the description of Holloway's vehicle in the parking lot around 6:30 p.m. She recalled this specifically because she had parked near the vehicle and noticed it was still running with no one inside. She thought this was unusual, but didn't report it at the time. After reading news coverage of the case, she realized the significance. Detective Morrison interviewed Summers in detail. She provided a written statement describing the vehicle's location, consistent with where it was eventually found. She stated the driver's door was closed and she saw no one in the immediate vicinity. She estimated she observed the vehicle for approximately 30 seconds before entering the mall. When she exited the mall at approximately 8:45 p.m., she noticed the vehicle was still there, but could not recall if it was still running. This witness statement established a critical timeline. Holloway's vehicle had been at the shopping center location by 6:30 p.m. on July 16th, approximately 45 minutes after she left work. The shopping center was approximately 3 miles from Mid-America Financial Services, normally a 7-minute drive. Investigators worked to account for the time between Holloway leaving work at 5:42 p.m. and her vehicle arriving at the shopping center by 6:30 p.m. The drive from her workplace to the bank ATM was approximately 5 minutes. ATM footage showed her there at 5:52 p.m. The drive from the bank to Crossroads Shopping Center was approximately 6 minutes, suggesting she should have arrived around 5:58 p.m. The 32-minute gap remained unexplained. Detective Morrison theorized several possibilities. Holloway might have stopped somewhere else between the bank and the shopping center. She might have driven around, perhaps making phone calls from a payphone. Or she might have gone to the shopping center immediately, but remained in her vehicle for an extended period. Given the witness report that the vehicle was running and empty at 6:30 p.m., the timeline suggested something had occurred to interrupt whatever plans Holloway had for that evening. The blood evidence from the driver's seat was sent to the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation Laboratory in Ankeny for analysis. According to the lab report dated August 4, 1993, serological testing confirmed the substance was human blood. Type testing determined it was type A positive blood, consistent with Holloway's blood type documented in her medical records. However, DNA analysis technology in 1993 was limited. The lab report noted that RFLP DNA analysis could be performed, but would require a larger sample size than was available. The analyst recommended preserving the remaining sample for future testing as technology advanced. Throughout August 1993, the investigation continued intensively. Detective Morrison and his team conducted more than 80 interviews. They examined Holloway's vehicle registration history, employment records, medical records, and every document they could obtain that might provide insight into her life or circumstances surrounding her disappearance. A dive team from the Iowa Department of Natural Resources searched Dry Run Creek and several retention ponds in the area during the last week of August. According to dive team reports, they searched approximately 2 miles of waterway and 4 retention ponds. They recovered various items, including a bicycle, shopping carts, and miscellaneous trash, but nothing related to the Holloway investigation. The case attracted significant media attention throughout Iowa. The Cedar Falls Courier published more than 20 articles about the case between July and December 1993. Local television stations KWWL and KCRG provided regular coverage. The Holloway family appeared in several news broadcasts, appealing for information. Margaret Holloway told reporters, "Jennifer was responsible and careful. Someone took her from us. Someone knows what happened." The Black Hawk County Sheriff's Office established a dedicated tip line for the case. According to case files, the tip line received 137 calls during the first 3 months of the investigation. Each tip was logged, investigated, and documented. Most tips were well-intentioned, but ultimately unhelpful. Several callers reported seeing women matching Holloway's description in various locations across Iowa and neighboring states. Each sighting was investigated and ruled out. One promising lead came on September 8, 1993. A caller reported seeing suspicious activity near Crossroads Shopping Center on the evening of July 16th. According to the tip line log, the caller, who wished to remain anonymous, stated they had seen a white van parked near the northwest corner of the shopping center parking lot around 7 p.m. that evening. The caller described seeing a man standing near the van, but could provide no detailed description. Detective Morrison pursued this lead extensively. He canvassed businesses near the shopping center, looking for anyone who might have seen a white van on July 16th. He reviewed vehicle registrations in Black Hawk County for white vans. He compiled a list of 17 white vans registered to individuals or businesses in the Cedar Falls area. Each registered owner was interviewed and their vehicles examined. None produced any connection to Holloway's disappearance. The investigation reached a critical juncture in late October 1993. Despite exhaustive efforts, investigators had developed no viable suspects. The case had generated volumes of documents, hundreds of interview reports, and numerous potential leads, but nothing had advanced the investigation toward identifying who was responsible for Holloway's disappearance or determining what had happened to her. On November 3, 1993, Detective Morrison submitted his final active investigation report to Black Hawk County Sheriff Robert Denton. The report, 16 pages in length, summarized the investigation's findings. Morrison concluded that Jennifer Holloway had most likely been abducted from the Crossroads Shopping Center parking lot on the evening of July 16, 1993. The blood evidence suggested she had been injured, though the small quantity indicated the injury was not immediately life-threatening. However, without additional evidence, specifically a body or a witness to the abduction, the investigation had reached an impasse. Sheriff Denton held a press conference on November 5, 1993. According to news coverage from KWWL, Denton told reporters that the investigation into Jennifer Holloway's disappearance remained open, but that active leads had been exhausted. He appealed for anyone with information to contact the sheriff's office. He assured the Holloway family and the public that the case would not be forgotten and that any new information would be thoroughly investigated. Case number 93-2847 was transferred to the Black Hawk County Sheriff's Office cold case files on November 8, 1993. The case file, contained in 4 archive boxes, was stored in the evidence room of the Sheriff's Office facility on East 6th Street in Waterloo. The physical evidence, including the blood samples, Holloway's purse and personal effects, and her vehicle, remained in the evidence custody system. For 29 years, case number 2847 remained cold. The evidence boxes sat in the sheriff's office evidence room, occasionally referenced when new cold case review initiatives were undertaken, but never advancing beyond preliminary assessment. Detective Morrison retired in 2008. Several other investigators reviewed the case over the years, but without new evidence or leads, there was little to pursue. The Holloway family never stopped searching for answers. According to newspaper archives, David and Margaret Holloway held annual memorial vigils at Cedar Falls City Hall on July 16th each year. Local media covered these vigils, keeping Jennifer's case in the public consciousness. The Holloways also advocated for missing persons causes, working with organizations like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Adults and the Iowa Missing Person Information Clearinghouse. In 2015, the Black Hawk County Sheriff's Office hired Michael Patterson as a cold case detective. Patterson, age 42 at the time, brought extensive experience in major crimes investigation. His personnel file shows he had worked previously as a homicide detective with the Polk County Sheriff's Office in Des Moines for 12 years. He had solved 6 cold cases during his tenure there, primarily through re-examination of forensic evidence and witness interviews. According to an interview Patterson gave to the Cedar Falls Courier in 2023, he first learned about the Holloway case during his orientation week at Black Hawk County. The case had a reputation in the office, Patterson told the newspaper. It was thorough, well documented, but it just never broke. When you see that much good police work that didn't yield results, you know it's because the right tool or technology wasn't available yet. Patterson initially focused on other cold cases with more immediate potential for resolution. However, he regularly reviewed the Holloway file, familiarizing himself with every detail. In early 2019, Patterson attended a seminar on forensic genetic genealogy sponsored by the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation. The seminar, held in Des Moines, featured presentations by genetic genealogists who had worked on several high-profile cold case investigations, including the Golden State Killer case in California. Forensic genetic genealogy, as explained in the seminar materials, involves uploading crime scene DNA profiles to public genealogy databases like GEDmatch or Family Tree DNA. These databases contain DNA profiles voluntarily submitted by individuals interested in tracing their family history. When a crime scene DNA profile is uploaded, the database's algorithms search for genetic matches, identifying individuals who share DNA segments with the unknown subject. These matches, ranging from close relatives to distant cousins, can be used to construct family trees. Through careful genealogical research, investigators can identify potential suspects. Patterson returned from the seminar convinced that forensic genetic genealogy could be applied to the Holloway case. However, several obstacles remained. First, the blood samples collected in 1993 had been tested using older serological methods that consumed most of the sample. Second, even if DNA could be extracted from remaining evidence, the sheriff's office had limited budget for expensive genetic genealogy services, which could cost between $15,000 and $50,000 per case. In June 2019, Patterson submitted a grant application to the Department of Justice's Bureau of Justice Assistance for funding to conduct forensic genetic genealogy analysis on several Black Hawk County cold cases, including the Holloway case. According to the grant application, Patterson requested $35,000 to cover laboratory testing and genetic genealogy consulting services for 3 cases. The grant was approved in December 2019, with funding to begin in fiscal year 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic delayed the project. The DNA laboratory contracted for the work, Othram Inc., based in the Woodlands, Texas, experienced significant backlogs due to pandemic-related disruptions. According to correspondence between Patterson and Othram's casework manager, the Holloway case samples were received by the laboratory in August 2020, but testing did not begin until March 2021. Othram's laboratory report, dated August 15, 2021, confirmed that DNA had been successfully extracted from evidence sample 932847A, one of the blood swabs collected from Holloway's vehicle in 1993. Using advanced DNA sequencing technology, specifically next-generation sequencing, the laboratory developed a comprehensive DNA profile. The report noted that the DNA quality was degraded due to age but sufficient for genetic genealogy purposes. The DNA profile was uploaded to GEDmatch, a public genealogy database, in September 2021. According to Patterson's case notes, the upload produced several matches at various levels of genetic relatedness. The closest match was at 178 centimorgans, indicating a relationship at the level of second cousins. Additional matches ranging from 60 to 120 centimorgans provided supplementary genealogical information. Patterson contracted with Karen Genealogy Services, a firm specializing in forensic genetic genealogy, to analyze the DNA matches and construct family trees. Lead genealogist Colleen Fitzpatrick, according to her work product report, began building family trees for each DNA match, working backward through generations to identify common ancestors. This process, documented in detail in her 97-page report, took approximately 4 months. Fitzpatrick's genealogical research identified a common ancestral couple, Herman and Ida Christensen, who had immigrated to Iowa from Denmark in 1891 and settled in Black Hawk County. The Christensens had 7 children, and their descendants spread throughout Iowa and neighboring states. According to Fitzpatrick's analysis, the unknown subject whose DNA was found in Holloway's vehicle was a direct descendant of the Christensens, likely through one of their sons, particularly James Christensen, born in 1895. The genealogical tree construction narrowed the suspect pool considerably. Fitzpatrick identified 43 male descendants of James Christensen who were alive in 1993 and would have been between the ages of 18 and 70 at the time of Holloway's disappearance. 15 of these individuals lived in Black Hawk County or adjacent counties. Fitzpatrick's report, completed in January 2022, provided Patterson with a prioritized list of potential suspects based on age, geographic proximity, and genealogical probability. Patterson began the painstaking process of investigating each individual on the list. This investigation, conducted between February and August 2022, involved reviewing criminal histories, employment records, and any documented connections to Jennifer Holloway or the Crossroads shopping center area. According to his investigative notes, Patterson eliminated most candidates through verification of their whereabouts in July 1993, analysis of their criminal history, or simple factors like age or physical capability. One name on the list required particular attention: Robert Daniel Christensen, age 51 in 1993. According to Iowa Department of Transportation records, Christensen held a valid driver's license at the time. His address in July 1993 was listed as 847 Western Avenue in Cedar Falls, approximately 2.4 miles from Crossroads Shopping Center. Waterloo City Directory records from 1993 showed he worked as a maintenance technician for Cedar Valley Medical Center. Patterson conducted a comprehensive background check on Robert Christensen. According to Iowa Courts Online, Christensen had no criminal convictions. His driving record showed 2 speeding tickets in the 1980s, but otherwise was unremarkable. He had lived in Cedar Falls continuously since 1979, according to voter registration records. He appeared, on paper, to be an ordinary citizen with no red flags. However, Patterson discovered a crucial connection. Employment records from Mid-America Financial Services, still maintained by the company despite a 2007 merger, showed that Robert Christensen had worked for the company's building maintenance contractor, Johnson Facilities Services, from June 1991 through September 1995. His work schedule placed him at the Mid-America Financial Services building regularly, typically working evening shifts from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., Monday through Friday. This meant Christensen would have had regular access to the building where Jennifer Holloway worked. He would have been familiar with the facility, the employee schedules, and potentially with Holloway herself. Moreover, his work schedule meant he would typically arrive at the building shortly after most employees, including Holloway, had left for the day. Patterson obtained employment records from Johnson Facilities Services, which had retained time card records even from the 1990s. According to these records, Christensen was scheduled to work on Friday, July 16, 1993. However, his time card showed he clocked in at 6:47 p.m., 47 minutes later than his scheduled 6 p.m. start time. The time card notation indicated personal delay with supervisor approval. Patterson interviewed Christensen's former supervisor at Johnson Facilities Services, William Garrett, who was now retired, but remembered the events of 1993. In an interview conducted on March 8, 2022, Garrett told Patterson that he specifically remembered Christensen arriving late that evening. According to Garrett's statement, Christensen had called around 5:30 p.m. saying he had a flat tire and would be late. Garrett approved the late arrival. Christensen worked his full shift and left around 2:30 a.m. on July 17, 1993. Patterson pulled the original 1993 investigation file and reviewed all employee interviews conducted at Mid-America Financial Services. He found that Detective Morrison had interviewed 9 employees, but not maintenance contractors. The original investigation had focused on Holloway's direct coworkers, but hadn't extended to contract employees who had building access. This was not an oversight, but rather a practical limitation, given the investigation's scope and resources in 1993. Patterson needed to confirm definitively that Robert Christensen's DNA matched the blood sample from Holloway's vehicle. The genetic genealogy had narrowed the suspect pool to descendants of the Christensen family, but it had not provided a direct match. Patterson needed a DNA sample from Robert Christensen for direct comparison. Under Iowa law, Patterson could not compel Christensen to provide a DNA sample without probable cause for an arrest. Patterson needed to collect a discarded DNA sample, also known as abandoned DNA. This required surveillance and careful planning to obtain an item Christensen had touched and discarded in a public place. In April 2022, Patterson assigned 2 investigators, deputies Jennifer Walsh and Thomas Rivera, to conduct surveillance on Christensen. According to their surveillance logs, they observed Christensen's daily routines over a 2-week period. Christensen, now age 80, lived alone in a modest home on Sycamore Street in Cedar Falls. He was retired and followed a regular schedule that included morning walks, weekly grocery shopping at Hy-Vee Supermarket, and attendance at Our Savior's Lutheran Church on Sunday mornings. On April 19, 2022, deputies Walsh and Rivera observed Christensen at Hy-Vee Supermarket. According to their report, Christensen purchased coffee at the in-store Starbucks cafe and sat at a table in the seating area. He drank the coffee while reading a newspaper. When he left, he discarded his coffee cup in a trash receptacle near the store exit. Deputy Walsh immediately secured the trash receptacle and retrieved the cup, documenting the chain of custody. The cup was packaged as evidence and transported to the Black Hawk County Sheriff's Office, where it was transferred to the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation Laboratory. The DCI laboratory extracted DNA from saliva on the coffee cup rim. On May 3, 2022, The laboratory compared this DNA profile to the DNA profile developed from the blood evidence in Holloway's vehicle. According to the laboratory report, the profiles matched at all analyzed loci. The statistical analysis calculated the probability of this match occurring by random chance as approximately 1 in 5.7 trillion for the general Caucasian population. Patterson now had scientific evidence linking Robert Christensen to the blood found in Jennifer Holloway's vehicle. On May 5, 2022, Patterson met with Black Hawk County Attorney Brian Williams to discuss the case. According to meeting notes, Patterson presented the DNA evidence, the genealogical analysis, Christensen's connection to Holloway's workplace, and his unexplained late arrival to work on July 16, 1993. County Attorney Williams requested additional investigation before authorizing charges. Specifically, he wanted Patterson to attempt to interview Christensen, providing him an opportunity to explain the DNA evidence. Williams also requested that Patterson search for any additional evidence that might corroborate the DNA match, such as witnesses who might have seen Christensen in the area of Crossroads Shopping Center on July 16, 1993. Patterson conducted extensive canvassing near the former location of Crossroads Shopping Center. The shopping center had been demolished in 2008 and replaced with a mixed-use development called University Parkway. Patterson contacted former mall employees, security personnel, and neighboring business owners who had been operating in 1993. He distributed photographs of Christensen from 1993, obtained from his driver's license records and employment files. This canvassing produced a significant lead. Patricia Summers, the witness who had reported seeing Holloway's running vehicle in the parking lot in 1993, was re-interviewed. When shown a photograph of Robert Christensen from 1993, Summers stated she could not be certain, but thought he resembled a man she had seen near the northwest corner of the shopping center parking lot on the evening of July 16, 1993. According to her May 2022 statement, she remembered seeing a man standing near the area where vehicles entered the parking lot from University Avenue around 6:15 p.m. She had not reported this in 1993 because she didn't think it was significant at the time. The man she saw was average height, wearing dark pants and a light-colored shirt. On June 14, 2022, Patterson and Deputy Walsh knocked on the door of Robert Christensen's residence at 9 a.m. According to Patterson's report, Christensen answered the door and agreed to speak with investigators. Patterson informed Christensen they were investigating a cold case and asked if he would be willing to answer questions. Christensen agreed and invited them inside. The interview was audio recorded with Christensen's consent. In the recording, Patterson asked Christensen about his employment at Johnson Facilities Services and whether he remembered working at Mid-America Financial Services. Christensen confirmed he had worked there, but said it was a long time ago, and he didn't remember specific details. Patterson asked if Christensen remembered Jennifer Holloway. Christensen stated the name sounded familiar, but he couldn't place it. When Patterson showed him a photograph of Holloway, Christensen said he might have seen her at the building, but didn't know her. Patterson then asked Christensen about July 16, 1993. Christensen said he couldn't possibly remember a specific day from nearly 30 years ago. Patterson asked if Christensen remembered being late to work that day because of a flat tire. Christensen paused, then said that sounded possible, but he couldn't remember specifically. Patterson asked where Christensen had been between 5:30 and 6:47 p.m. on July 16, 1993. Christensen replied that he had no idea and couldn't be expected to remember his whereabouts on a specific day 3 decades ago. Patterson then informed Christensen that DNA evidence had been recovered from Jennifer Holloway's vehicle and asked if Christensen could explain why his DNA would be found there. According to Patterson's report, Christensen became quiet. After a long pause, Christensen asked if he needed a lawyer. Patterson told him he was not under arrest and was free to stop the interview at any time. Christensen stated he wanted to stop talking and wanted Patterson to leave. Patterson and Walsh left the residence. According to their report, they immediately returned to the sheriff's office and met again with County Attorney Williams. Patterson provided Williams with the audio recording of the interview. Williams reviewed the evidence: the DNA match, Christensen's connection to Holloway's workplace, his late arrival to work on July 16, 1993, the potential witness identification, and his refusal to provide an innocent explanation for his DNA being in Holloway's vehicle. On June 16, 2022, County Attorney Williams authorized murder charges against Robert Daniel Christensen. An arrest warrant was issued by Judge Sandra Thompson of the Black Hawk County District Court. The warrant charged Christensen with first-degree murder and first-degree kidnapping in connection with the disappearance and presumed death of Jennifer Marie Holloway. On June 17, 2022, at 6 a.m., a tactical team from the Black Hawk County Sheriff's Office executed the arrest warrant at Christensen's residence. According to the arrest report, Christensen was taken into custody without incident. He was transported to the Black Hawk County Jail and booked at 6:47 a.m. His initial appearance before a magistrate was scheduled for that afternoon. The arrest generated immediate and extensive media coverage. The Cedar Falls Courier published a front-page story on June 18, 2022, with the headline, "Arrest Made in 1993 Holloway Disappearance." Local television stations provided live coverage of Christensen being led into the courthouse for his initial appearance. The story was picked up by regional and national media, with coverage in the Des Moines Register and mentions on national cable news networks. Robert Daniel Christensen made his initial appearance before Magistrate Carol Henderson on June 17, 2022, at 2:01 p.m. According to court records, Christensen was represented by Public Defender Susan Martinez from the State Public Defender's Office. County Attorney Brian Williams appeared for the prosecution. Magistrate Henderson informed Christensen of the charges against him: first-degree murder and first-degree kidnapping, both Class A felonies under Iowa law. Williams argued for Christensen to be held without bond, citing the severity of the charges and the fact that Christensen had no ties to prevent flight. Martinez argued that Christensen was 80 years old, had lived in Cedar Falls for more than 40 years, had no criminal record, and posed no flight risk. After hearing arguments, Magistrate Henderson ordered Christensen held on $1 million bond cash only. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for July 8, 2022. The preliminary hearing began at 9 a.m. on July 8, 2022, in Black Hawk County District Court before Judge Thomas Reynolds. The hearing lasted approximately 4 hours. According to the court transcript, the prosecution presented testimony from 3 witnesses: Detective Michael Patterson, forensic DNA analyst Dr. Rachel Morrison from the Iowa DCI Laboratory, and genetic genealogist Colleen Fitzpatrick. Detective Patterson testified to his investigation, including the review of the original 1993 case file, the development of DNA evidence through advanced testing, and the genealogical research that led to Christensen as a suspect. He described Christensen's connection to Holloway's workplace and his late arrival to work on July 16, 1993. Patterson also testified about the discarded DNA collection and the laboratory's conclusion that Christensen's DNA matched the blood found in Holloway's vehicle. Dr. Morrison testified about the DNA analysis. She explained to the court how DNA was extracted from the 1993 blood sample, how next-generation sequencing developed a usable profile despite the sample's age, and how that profile was compared to the DNA from Christensen's discarded coffee cup. According to the transcript, Dr. Morrison stated the probability of the match being coincidental was approximately 1 in 5.7 trillion. She testified that in her professional opinion, the DNA from the blood in Holloway's vehicle came from Robert Christensen. Colleen Fitzpatrick testified about forensic genetic genealogy. She explained the process of uploading DNA profiles to public databases, identifying genetic relatives, and constructing family trees to identify potential suspects. She described her research into the Christensen family lineage and how that research narrowed the suspect pool to Robert Christensen and a small number of relatives. Fitzpatrick testified that the genetic evidence, combined with geographic and age factors, made Robert Christensen the most likely contributor of the DNA found in Holloway's vehicle. Defense attorney Martinez cross-examined all three witnesses. She challenged the chain of custody for the 1993 evidence, asking detailed questions about storage conditions and handling procedures over 29 years. Dr. Morrison testified that the evidence had been properly stored and that contamination had been ruled out through laboratory protocols. Martinez also questioned whether the blood in Holloway's vehicle was necessarily connected to her disappearance, suggesting it could have been from an earlier, unrelated incident. Patterson testified that Holloway's vehicle had been cleaned and detailed in May 1993, according to service records, making it unlikely the blood predated July 16, 1993. Judge Reynolds found probable cause and bound the case over for trial. Christensen was arraigned on July 22, 2022. According to court records, he entered a plea of not guilty to both charges. The case was assigned to Judge Patricia Walker for trial. A trial date was initially set for February 2023. Between the arraignment and trial, both sides engaged in extensive pretrial motions and discovery. According to the court docket, the defense filed 14 pretrial motions, including motions to suppress the DNA evidence, motions to exclude the genetic genealogy testimony, and motions challenging the sufficiency of the evidence to proceed to trial without a body. The prosecution filed responses to each motion, supported by case law from other jurisdictions where similar DNA evidence and genealogy methods had been admitted. A critical hearing occurred on November 18, 2022. Defense attorney Martinez, now joined by co-counsel Robert Thompson from a private criminal defense firm, argued that the discarded DNA collection violated Christensen's constitutional rights under the Fourth Amendment. Thompson cited cases suggesting that even abandoned DNA retained an expectation of privacy. County Attorney Williams, assisted by Assistant County Attorney David Chen, argued that Iowa law and federal precedent clearly established that discarded materials in public places had no expectation of privacy. Judge Walker issued a written ruling on December 2, 2022. The 37-page order analyzed Fourth Amendment jurisprudence regarding abandoned property and DNA collection. Judge Walker concluded that Christensen had no reasonable expectation of privacy in a coffee cup he discarded in a public trash receptacle. The collection was lawful. The DNA evidence would be admitted at trial. The defense also challenged the admissibility of the genetic genealogy evidence. In a motion filed October 14, 2022, defense attorney Thompson argued that forensic genetic genealogy was novel scientific evidence that had not been sufficiently validated for courtroom use. The defense requested a Daubert hearing to determine whether the methodology met Iowa's standards for scientific evidence admissibility. The Daubert hearing was held on January 9 and 10, 2023. The prosecution called Dr. Morrison and Colleen Fitzpatrick as expert witnesses. Both testified about the scientific basis of genetic genealogy, the validation studies supporting the methodology, and its acceptance in the forensic community. The defense called its own expert, Dr. Kenneth Harrison, a molecular biologist from the University of Iowa. Dr. Harrison testified that while DNA sequencing was well-established science, using public genealogy databases for forensic purposes raised concerns about genetic privacy and potential for error in genealogical research. Judge Walker issued her ruling on January 27, 2023. According to the 18-page order, she found that forensic genetic genealogy, when properly performed, met Iowa's standards for scientific evidence under Iowa Rule of Evidence 5.702. The methodology had been peer-reviewed, had known error rates, and had gained general acceptance in the forensic community. Fitzpatrick would be permitted to testify as an expert witness. However, Judge Walker limited the scope of testimony, ruling that Fitzpatrick could explain her methodology, but could not testify to the ultimate conclusion of guilt. With key evidentiary issues resolved, the trial was rescheduled. On March 13, 2023, Judge Walker set the trial date for September 11, 2023. Both sides used the intervening months for final trial preparation. According to court filings, the prosecution's witness list included 23 witnesses. The defense's witness list included 7 witnesses, though it was noted that Christensen had not yet decided whether he would testify. The trial of Robert Daniel Christensen began on September 11, 2023, in Black Hawk County District Court. Jury selection consumed the first 2 days. According to court records, the jury pool consisted of 75 potential jurors. After extensive voir dire, a jury of 12 and 4 alternates was seated on September 13, 2023. The jury consisted of 7 women and 5 men, ranging in age from mid-20s to mid-60s. Several had lived in the Cedar Falls, Waterloo area in 1993 and remembered when Jennifer Holloway disappeared. Opening statements began on September 14, 2023, at 9 a.m. County Attorney Brian Williams delivered the prosecution's opening statement. According to the trial transcript, Williams spoke for 47 minutes. He described Jennifer Holloway as a hard-working, responsible young woman who vanished without a trace in July 1993. He explained how Robert Christensen had access to the building where Holloway worked, how he was late to work on the night she disappeared, and how his blood was found in her vehicle. Williams told the jury that the blood evidence was the key to solving this 29-year-old mystery. Defense attorney Robert Thompson delivered the defense's opening statement. According to the transcript, Thompson spoke for 32 minutes. He acknowledged that Christensen's DNA was found in Holloway's vehicle, but argued that this single piece of evidence was insufficient to prove murder. Thompson emphasized that no body had been found, no eyewitness placed Christensen with Holloway that evening, and the blood evidence could have innocent explanations. He told the jury that the state would not be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Robert Christensen killed Jennifer Holloway. The prosecution began presenting its case on September 14, 2023, following opening statements. The first witness was Margaret Holloway, Jennifer's mother, now 81 years old. According to the transcript, Margaret Holloway testified about her daughter's character, her routine, and the events of July 16, 1993. She described calling her daughter's apartment repeatedly that evening and her husband driving to check on their daughter. Margaret Holloway broke down in tears several times during her testimony. She told the jury that not knowing what happened to her daughter had been unbearable for nearly 30 years. Detective Frank Morrison, the original lead investigator, now retired and 74 years old, testified on September 15, 2023. Morrison described the 1993 investigation in detail. He walked the jury through the discovery of Holloway's vehicle, the evidence collection, the witness interviews, and the investigation's eventual stall. Morrison testified about the limitations of forensic technology in 1993 and his hope that advances in DNA testing would someday solve the case. Cold case detective Michael Patterson testified on September 18, 2023. His testimony spanned more than 5 hours across 2 days. Patterson described his reopening of the case, the forensic genetic genealogy process, and the investigation that led to Christensen. He testified about Christensen's connection to Holloway's workplace and his unexplained late arrival to work on July 16, 1993. Patterson described the discarded DNA collection and the subsequent match to the blood evidence. Under cross-examination by defense attorney Thompson, Patterson acknowledged that no eyewitness had identified Christensen at the shopping center on July 16, 1993. He admitted that Christensen had no known relationship with Holloway beyond his maintenance work at her building. Patterson conceded that the investigation had not located Holloway's body or determined exactly what happened to her after she disappeared. Dr. Rachel Morrison testified on September 20, 2023. She explained the DNA testing process in detail, using visual aids to help the jury understand complex scientific concepts. Dr. Morrison testified that the DNA profile from the blood in Holloway's vehicle matched Robert Christensen's DNA at all analyzed genetic markers. She explained that the probability of this match being coincidental was approximately 1 in 5.7 trillion. Under cross-examination, Dr. Morrison acknowledged that DNA evidence cannot determine when blood was deposited or the circumstances under which it was deposited. Colleen Fitzpatrick testified on September 21, 2023. She explained forensic genetic genealogy to the jury, describing how DNA matches in genealogy databases can be used to identify suspects through family tree construction. Fitzpatrick walked the jury through her research into the Christensen family, showing family tree charts and explaining how she narrowed the suspect pool. Under cross-examination, Fitzpatrick acknowledged that genetic genealogy provides investigative leads but does not constitute definitive identification without direct DNA comparison. The prosecution called several witnesses who testified about Christensen's employment at Mid-America Financial Services. William Garrett, his former supervisor, testified about Christensen's work schedule and his late arrival on July 16, 1993. Former Mid-America employees testified that maintenance workers had access to all areas of the building and that Christensen would have been familiar with employee schedules and routines. Patricia Summers testified on September 25, 2023. She described seeing Holloway's vehicle running and empty in the Crossroads Shopping Center parking lot around 6:30 p.m. on July 16, 1993. She also testified about seeing a man near the parking lot entrance around 6:15 p.m. When shown a photograph of Christensen from 1993, Summers testified that the man resembled the person she saw, but she could not be absolutely certain. Under cross-examination, defense attorney Martinez pressed Summers on her inability to make a positive identification and the fact that she had not reported seeing this man in 1993. The prosecution rested its case on September 26, 2023. According to court records, the state had called 21 witnesses over 10 days of testimony. The defense moved for a directed verdict of acquittal, arguing that the state had failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Christensen had murdered Holloway. Judge Walker denied the motion, ruling that a reasonable jury could find Christensen guilty based on the evidence presented. The defense began its case on September 27, 2023. Defense attorney Thompson called Dr. Kenneth Harrison, the molecular biologist who had testified at the Dober hearing. Dr. Harrison testified that while DNA evidence was powerful, it could not explain how or when blood was deposited. He emphasized that the small quantity of blood in Holloway's vehicle suggested a minor injury, not necessarily a violent crime. Under cross-examination, Dr. Harrison acknowledged that he could not provide an innocent explanation for Christensen's blood being in Holloway's vehicle. The defense called two character witnesses who testified that they had known Christensen for many years and had never known him to be violent or aggressive. Both witnesses testified that Christensen was a quiet, private person who kept to himself. Under cross-examination, County Attorney Williams asked both witnesses if they knew where Christensen was on the evening of July 16, 1993. Both testified they did not know. The central question of the trial became whether Christensen would testify in his own defense. According to legal analysts who covered the trial, this was a critical strategic decision. If Christensen testified, he could potentially provide an innocent explanation for his blood being in Holloway's vehicle. However, testifying would expose him to cross-examination by experienced prosecutors. After consulting with his attorneys, Christensen exercised his Fifth Amendment right and did not testify. The defense rested on September 28, 2023. Both sides presented closing arguments on September 29, 2023. County Attorney Williams spoke first, reviewing the evidence systematically. He argued that the DNA evidence conclusively proved Christensen's blood was in Holloway's vehicle. Combined with Christensen's access to her workplace, his late arrival to work that evening, and the lack of any innocent explanation, Williams argued the evidence proved Christensen kidnapped and murdered Jennifer Holloway. Williams acknowledged that the state could not prove exactly how Holloway died or where her body was, but argued that the circumstantial evidence was overwhelming. Defense attorney Thompson argued that the DNA evidence, while compelling, was only one piece of evidence. Without a body, without an eyewitness, without a confession, and without evidence of motive, Thompson argued the state had not met its burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. He emphasized that Christensen had no criminal history, no known connection to Holloway, and no apparent reason to harm her. Thompson argued that the presence of blood could have innocent explanations the investigation had not uncovered. Judge Walker instructed the jury on the law. According to the transcript, she explained that the jury must find the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. She defined reasonable doubt and explained that circumstantial evidence could be just as valid as direct evidence. She instructed the jury on the elements of first-degree murder and first-degree kidnapping. The jury retired to deliberate at 3:47 p.m. on September 29, 2023. The jury deliberated for 16 hours over 3 days. According to news coverage, they sent 2 questions to Judge Walker during deliberations. The first asked if they could convict on murder charges without a body. Judge Walker instructed them that yes, murder could be proven through circumstantial evidence, even without recovery of a victim's body. The second question asked about the significance of the late arrival to work. Judge Walker instructed them to consider all evidence and give it whatever weight they found appropriate. On October 2, 2023, at 2:37 p.m., the jury informed the bailiff they had reached a verdict. Judge Walker reconvened court at 3:00 p.m. The courtroom was packed with media, family members, and members of the public who had followed the case. According to court observers, the atmosphere was tense. Robert Christensen sat impassively at the defense table. Margaret and David Holloway sat in the front row of the gallery. The jury foreman, a 58-year-old engineer from Cedar Falls, delivered the verdict. According to the court record, the jury found Robert Daniel Christensen guilty of first-degree murder. The jury also found him guilty of first-degree kidnapping. Judge Walker polled the jury. All 12 jurors affirmed the verdicts. Margaret Holloway wept quietly. Several jury members also appeared emotional. Robert Christensen showed no visible reaction. Judge Walker thanked the jury for their service and dismissed them. She scheduled sentencing for November 15, 2023. Christensen was remanded to custody. The sentencing hearing for Robert Daniel Christensen took place on November 15, 2023, at 9 a.m. in Black Hawk County District Court. According to court records, the hearing lasted approximately 3 hours. Iowa law mandates life imprisonment without possibility of parole for first-degree murder convictions. Judge Walker had limited discretion, but the hearing provided an opportunity for victim impact statements and for the defense to present mitigation evidence. The prosecution called 2 witnesses to provide victim impact statements. Marie Holloway addressed the court first. According to the transcript, she spoke for 18 minutes. She described the decades of pain and uncertainty her family had endured. She told the court about the annual memorial vigils, about the hope that slowly faded over the years, and about the relief she felt when an arrest was finally made. She looked directly at Christensen and said, "You took our daughter from us. You robbed us of 30 years with her. You will never know the pain you've caused." David Holloway, now 83 and using a walker, also addressed the court. He spoke briefly, saying simply that he was grateful to finally know what happened to his daughter and that justice, though delayed, had been served. The defense presented mitigation evidence. Defense attorney Robert Thompson called a psychologist who had evaluated Christensen. Dr. Patricia Freeman testified that Christensen, now 81 years old and in declining health, posed no threat to society. She recommended considering his age and health status. Thompson also argued that Christensen's lack of criminal history before or after 1993 suggested this was an isolated incident, though he did not attempt to explain what might have motivated the crime. The prosecution argued against any leniency. County Attorney Brian Williams told the court that Christensen had evaded justice for 29 years while the Holloway family suffered. Williams argued that Christensen had never shown remorse, never explained what happened to Jennifer Holloway, and never disclosed where her body could be found. Williams urged the court to impose the maximum sentence allowed by law. Judge Patricia Walker delivered her sentencing decision. According to the transcript, she noted that the jury had convicted Christensen based on strong forensic evidence and that the crime was particularly cruel given that the victim's family never recovered her body and never learned what happened. Judge Walker sentenced Christensen to life imprisonment without possibility of parole for the murder conviction and an additional mandatory life sentence for the kidnapping conviction to be served concurrently. Christensen was ordered to pay restitution of $15,000 to the Holloway family for funeral expenses and memorial costs, though no formal burial had taken place. Robert Christensen was transferred to the Iowa State Penitentiary in Fort Madison to begin serving his sentence. According to Iowa Department of Corrections records, he was assigned inmate number 8376482. He was placed in a unit designated for elderly inmates with special medical needs. In December 2023, defense attorneys Thompson and Martinez filed a notice of appeal to the Iowa Court of Appeals. The appeal brief, filed in March 2024, raised several issues. The defense argued that the trial court erred in admitting the DNA evidence obtained from discarded materials, that the genetic genealogy testimony should have been excluded as insufficiently reliable, and that the evidence was insufficient to support a murder conviction without a body. The Iowa Attorney General's office filed a response brief in June 2024, defending the conviction and arguing that the trial court had properly applied Iowa law. The appeal remained pending as of December 2024. Legal experts who analyzed the case told media outlets that the appeal had limited chances of success given the strength of the DNA evidence and the fact that similar evidence had been upheld in other jurisdictions. However, the case's reliance on genetic genealogy could potentially result in appellate courts establishing new precedents regarding the use of such evidence in criminal cases. The Holloway family, meanwhile, continued seeking closure through other means. In January 2024, Detective Michael Patterson and representatives from the Holloway family held a press conference appealing for information about Jennifer Holloway's remains. Patterson told reporters that while Christensen had been convicted, the family still hoped to recover Jennifer's body for a proper burial. He urged anyone with information about what Christensen did on July 16th or 17th, 1993, or any locations he might have accessed, to contact the Black Hawk County Sheriff's Office. In March 2024, the Sheriff's Office conducted a search of rural areas in Black Hawk County based on analysis of land records and Christensen's known activities. According to news reports, investigators used cadaver dogs and ground-penetrating radar to search several locations, including an area near the Cedar River and a former gravel pit. The searches did not locate any remains. Patterson told reporters that the investigation remained active and that they would continue pursuing any credible leads. The case prompted discussions about the use of genetic genealogy in criminal investigations. In April 2024, the Iowa legislature held hearings on proposed legislation to regulate the use of genetic genealogy databases by law enforcement. Civil liberties advocates raised concerns about genetic privacy and the potential for misuse. Law enforcement representatives, including Detective Patterson, testified about the value of genetic genealogy in solving cold cases and bringing closure to families. The proposed legislation remained under consideration as of December 2024. The case also renewed attention to other cold cases in Iowa. The Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation announced in May 2024 that it would dedicate additional resources to applying forensic genetic genealogy to unsolved cases. The agency identified 37 cold cases with preserved DNA evidence that could potentially be solved using genetic genealogy techniques. Families of victims in several of these cases told media outlets they were hopeful that advances in DNA technology might finally provide answers. For Cedar Falls, the resolution of the Holloway case brought a measure of closure to a mystery that had haunted the community for decades. The Cedar Falls City Council voted in June 2024 to rename a section of the Cedar River Trail in Jennifer Holloway's memory. The Jennifer Holloway Memorial Trail now features a plaque describing her love of running and commemorating her life. The dedication ceremony, held on July 16, 2024, the 31st anniversary of her disappearance, was attended by more than 200 community members, including many who remembered the original investigation. Margaret Holloway, now 82, told reporters at the dedication that while the trial verdict had provided some solace, she still hoped for the recovery of her daughter's remains. "We want to bring Jennifer home," she said. "We want to give her a proper burial. That's all we've ever wanted." David Holloway passed away in August 2024 at age 84. His obituary noted that he had devoted decades to seeking justice for his daughter and had lived to see her killer convicted. The obituary stated that he would be buried in Cedar Falls Memorial Cemetery, where a plot had been reserved next to a memorial stone for Jennifer, awaiting the day when her remains might be found and laid to rest beside her father. The case of Jennifer Holloway stands as a testament to persistence in criminal investigation and the power of advancing forensic science. Detective Michael Patterson told the Cedar Falls Courier in September 2024 that the case demonstrated that cold cases are never truly closed. "The evidence was there in 1993, Patterson said. "We just didn't have the tools to interpret it yet. That's the promise of science. What we can't solve today, we might solve tomorrow." As of December 2024, Robert Daniel Christensen remained incarcerated at the Iowa State Penitentiary, serving his life sentence. According to Iowa Department of Corrections records, he was 82 years old and had required increasing medical care for various age-related conditions. He had not granted any media interviews and had not provided any information about Jennifer Holloway's final hours or the location of her remains. The investigation into Jennifer Holloway's disappearance technically remained open, specifically regarding the recovery of her body. Detective Patterson told our team in a November 2024 interview that he reviews the case file regularly, looking for any angle that might lead to that final piece of closure for the Holloway family. Justice was served with the conviction, Patterson said, but the family deserves more than justice. They deserve to bring their daughter home. The Black Hawk County Sheriff's Office continues to accept tips regarding the case. Anyone with information about the Jennifer Holloway case is urged to contact the Black Hawk County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Unit at 312-833-3000 or submit an anonymous tip through the Iowa Crime Stoppers website. Jennifer Marie Holloway was 28 years old when she disappeared on July 16, 1993. She would have been 59 years old today. Her memory lives on in the hearts of those who knew her, in the trail that bears her name, and in the determination of investigators and family members who refuse to give up hope that someday she will finally come home.